Gordon Livingston, a 40-year-old former manager at Monsanto Mowers, whose life is turned upside down when he's not only fired from his job, but discovers his wife's betrayal with his boss. With nothing left to lose, he forms an unexpected partnership with a former secretary, Sally One-Eye, and together, they set out to rebuild their lives. But can they turn tragedy into triumph and create a new future from the ashes of their pasts? Watch as Gordon and Sally discover that sometimes the hardest setbacks lead to the brightest comebacks. Gordon Livingston's life was a carefully built house of cards. At 40, he had everything he thought he ever needed: his career at Monsanto Mowers, a stable job he had worked hard to climb, a loving wife named Laura, and 2 children who filled his home with laughter. He was the epitome of success. But all it took was a single, crushing phone call to bring everything crashing down. The call came from his boss, Tony Roberts, who, with an air of detachment, informed Gordon that he was being let go. "It's nothing personal," Tony said coldly, as if those words could soften the blow. Gordon sat in disbelief, his mind scrambling to process what had just happened. Fired? After years of loyalty, this was how it ended. But that was just the beginning. As Gordon walked to his office, gathering his things, trying to salvage some semblance of dignity, the air in the room shifted. Among his personal files, tucked in a drawer, he found a series of incriminating emails. His heart stopped when he saw them: photos, messages, evidence of his wife Laura's affair with Tony. Betrayal hit him harder than the firing. The man who had just taken his job had also taken his wife. It was too much to process. Gordon couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All the years of marriage, the commitment, the family, it all felt like a lie. Packing up his belongings, Gordon moved through the motions, but he wasn't really there. His life, his marriage, and his career, everything had unraveled in an instant. He was no longer the man who had everything. Now, he was a man with nothing but the bitter sting of betrayal and the cold reality of being discarded. The woman he loved, the job he dedicated his life to, were gone. Gordon was left standing in the ruins of his former life, wondering where he went wrong and what to do next. Gordon's heart felt empty, but little did he know, someone was about to offer him the kind of support he didn't expect. Sally One-Eye, a 38-year-old secretary at Monsanto Mowers, had always been an acquaintance to Gordon, someone who knew the ropes of the office, worked hard, and had a no-nonsense attitude. She was sharp, practical, and carried herself with a tough exterior. But beneath that, Sally had a kind heart. And after Gordon's firing, she showed him exactly how much of an ally she could be. As Gordon sat in his office, the finality of his dismissal weighing heavily on him, Sally appeared in the doorway. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer pity. She simply asked, "Do you need help?" That simple gesture spoke volumes. She had already been a casualty of Tony's decisions, but instead of crumbling, she was standing there, offering to help Gordon gather his things. In that moment, Sally wasn't just a colleague, she was the first person who seemed to understand the magnitude of what he was going through. Together, they cleared out his office. The awkward silence between them gradually gave way to a more honest conversation, one where Gordon shared the anguish of his discovery and the shock of his job loss. Sally listened, offering him her undivided attention, something Gordon hadn't realized he needed until that moment. He wasn't just an employee who had been let go, he was a man whose entire world had shifted, and Sally understood that. They were both victims of Tony's decisions, but while Gordon had lost faith, Sally had learned to endure. It was this shared experience that forged the bond between them. Sally's support wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. For the first time since his world fell apart, Gordon didn't feel so alone. He wasn't ready to move on yet, but Sally made him realize that he didn't have to do it by himself. This was only the beginning, and maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild together. Gordon had always prided himself on being a good husband, loyal, dependable, and emotionally available. He had spent years working long hours to provide for his family, believing that this was what his wife Laura wanted, what she needed. But now, standing face to face with her in their living room, the reality of everything he had sacrificed for his family came crashing down. The truth about his wife's affair had shattered him to his core, and he needed answers. "Laura, what is this?" How long has this been going on? Gordon asked, his voice hoarse with emotion. His eyes searched her face, looking for any sign of guilt, any trace of remorse, but he found none. Instead, Laura stood there, distant, detached, as if the conversation wasn't worth her emotional investment. She met his gaze with a coldness that sent a chill down Gordon's spine. "It's been a while now, Gordon," she admitted with a tone that felt almost indifferent. "Tony and we're in love. I never meant to hurt you, but I had to follow my heart." Her words stung like acid, each one a blow to the life they had built together. As she spoke, Gordon's mind raced, trying to make sense of what she was saying. His heart felt as if it had shattered into 1,000 pieces. He had been a devoted husband, working tirelessly to ensure his family's future, but all the while, Laura had been living a secret life with his own boss, Tony. Gordon's world tilted on its axis. The woman he had trusted more than anyone else had been unfaithful to him for God knows how long. She had betrayed him with the very man who had just taken his job. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut, leaving him breathless. As he stood there, staring at Laura, the years of shared memories, happy moments, family vacations, anniversaries seemed meaningless now. He was left holding the remnants of a marriage that had been built on lies. As Gordon packed up the things he had shared with Laura, the photographs, the letters, the small tokens of their life together, he felt a strange numbness. It wasn't anger that surged through him, it was an aching emptiness. Laura's affair had pulled the rug out from under him, leaving him with nothing but the painful realization that his life had been a lie. But as devastating as the confrontation was, it also marked the beginning of Gordon's transformation. He had been betrayed, but he was not defeated. The man he was before this moment was gone. A new Gordon was beginning to take shape, and he would no longer allow himself to be someone's fool. In the weeks following his confrontation with Laura, Gordon found himself navigating an unfamiliar world. No longer part of the steady rhythm of office life, he found himself sitting at an employment office, surrounded by others who had lost their jobs for one reason or another. The faces around him were weary, and the sense of uncertainty hung in the air. But as he looked around, one familiar face caught his attention: Sally One Eye. Sally had been let go from Monsanto Mowers at the same time as Gordon, another casualty of Tony's merciless leadership. But unlike Gordon, who was still reeling from the betrayal and loss, Sally seemed unfazed. She had a quiet confidence, the kind that comes with having weathered storms and survived them. As soon as their eyes met, Gordon knew that despite the pain and uncertainty, he wasn't truly alone. Sally had been through her own struggles and she understood. They exchanged a small smile, a silent acknowledgement of the hardship they had both endured. "Looks like we're both in the same boat," Sally remarked with a wry grin, but her voice held a note of camaraderie. "Maybe we should start something of our own." Gordon couldn't help but chuckle. It wasn't just the idea of starting a business that intrigued him, it was the thought of doing it with someone who understood what he had been through. Together, they had both been discarded by the man they had once trusted, and now they had the chance to rebuild something new. As they sat together, filling out forms and talking about their future, Gordon began to feel a spark of hope. Sally wasn't just offering him practical help, she was offering him the kind of partnership that could turn his life around. Her strength, resilience, and loyalty were exactly what Gordon needed at that moment. He wasn't just starting over alone, he had Sally by his side. And together they would find a way forward, no matter how uncertain the road ahead might be. After weeks of uncertainty, frustration, and self-reflection, Gordon was beginning to see a flicker of hope. Life had thrown him into a pit of despair, but there were still opportunities to climb out. One such opportunity came in the form of Earl Simmons, an old acquaintance from Gordon's past. Earl was a tough, no-nonsense businessman who had built a reputation for turning struggling companies around. Gordon first met Earl when he was looking for advice on how to rebuild his life after the disaster at Monsanto Mowers. Gordon had met Earl at a few industry events over the years, and while their conversations had always been polite, they never truly connected on a personal level. But now, in the midst of his crisis, Gordon found himself reaching out to Earl, desperate for a way to provide for his family and rebuild his sense of purpose. To Gordon's surprise, Earl didn't hesitate when he heard Gordon's story. "I've seen men go through hell and come out the other side," Earl said, his gravelly voice filled with conviction. "You're down now, but you're not out. I've got a chance for you, Gordon. A partnership. You and me. We'll revive a farm equipment business I've been looking into." Gordon was stunned. Earl was offering him a lifeline, something that seemed too good to be true. But Earl was a man of his word, and Gordon could sense the sincerity in his offer. Earl had a keen eye for business, and he saw something in Gordon that made him believe they could make this work. It wasn't just the prospect of financial gain, it was the idea that Gordon could rebuild his life, find his footing again, and regain his dignity. But there was a catch: Gordon would need to be willing to take risks. Earl wasn't offering an easy path, but he was offering a real chance at redemption. In that moment, Gordon realized that this wasn't just an offer to restart his career, it was an opportunity to rewrite the story of his life. Sally, who had been by his side through it all, was the first person Gordon turned to for advice. She had always believed in him, even when he doubted himself. And when Gordon told her about Earl's offer, Sally didn't hesitate for a second. "You've got this, Gordon. This is your chance to do something that matters. Let's take it." Together, Gordon and Sally began to lay the groundwork for their new business venture, with Earl's guidance. This was their turning point, a moment that would mark the beginning of their journey into the unknown, but with the hope that it would lead them to something better than they had ever imagined. As the weeks passed, Gordon and Sally worked tirelessly, laying the foundation for their new farm equipment business. Every day presented new challenges, but they were determined to succeed. Their spirits were high, despite the obstacles they faced. They had a vision, and they were committed to making it a reality. One day, while attending an industry trade show, Gordon received a call that would change everything. It was from a supplier he had been speaking with for some time, a Korean manufacturer known for producing high-quality farm equipment at an affordable price. The supplier had been hesitant at first, but after much negotiation, they had agreed to a groundbreaking deal. The supplier was willing to provide the equipment on consignment. This meant Gordon wouldn't have to pay up front, which was a huge relief given the financial strain they were under. This offer gave Gordon the chance to stock his business with the equipment he needed without the risk of heavy upfront costs. It was a rare opportunity that many in the industry would have given anything to secure. And it was happening for Gordon. When Gordon shared the news with Sally, her face lit up with excitement. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. For the first time in months, they felt the thrill of real progress. With the equipment they would receive on consignment, they could launch their business with minimal overhead, putting them in a competitive position to carve out a place in the market. It was a huge step forward, and they both knew it could be the key to turning their business and their lives around. As Gordon sat back and reflected on how far they had come, he realized just how much had changed. From the depths of despair to this moment of opportunity, he had found a new sense of purpose. He wasn't just building a business, he was rebuilding his life. And with Sally by his side, he knew they could face any challenge that came their way. This was the moment of hope they had been waiting for. The business wasn't just about selling farm equipment, it was about building something from the ground up, something that was theirs. And as they moved forward with the deal, Gordon knew that this was only the beginning of their journey toward a brighter future. As the new business venture began to take shape, something remarkable was happening to Sally One Eye. For years, she had carried the weight of her past, a life marked by struggles, both personal and professional. A woman of resilience, Sally had worked tirelessly as a secretary at Monsanto Mowers, but she had always been held back by her physical appearance. Her prosthetic eye, the result of an accident in her youth, had caused her to feel like an outsider, even though she was sharp, capable, and driven. Over time, it had affected her self-esteem, and she had started to believe that she wasn't worthy of the kind of success she truly deserved. But as the new business started to grow, so did Sally. Gordon had noticed the subtle changes in her. She was becoming more confident, more assertive, and more willing to take the risks necessary to push the business forward. But it wasn't just her work ethic that was changing, there was something deeper happening within her. She was learning to believe in herself in ways she had never thought possible. One pivotal moment came when Sally decided to visit a specialist to address the issues with her prosthesis. It had always caused discomfort and, in recent months, had begun to affect her confidence during business meetings. With Gordon's encouragement, she took the plunge and sought out dental care to adjust her prosthesis. The results were nothing short of life-changing. She walked out of the clinic that day with a new sense of pride. The improvements were not just physical, they were emotional too. For the first time in years, Sally felt whole. She could look at herself in the mirror and smile, no longer hiding behind the discomfort of her appearance. The adjustments to her prosthetic eye not only helped her regain a more natural look, but also restored her sense of self-worth. It was as though a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Sally's transformation wasn't just about looks, it was about reclaiming her sense of power. With newfound confidence, she threw herself into the business with renewed energy. She was no longer the quiet, self-doubting secretary, she was Gordon's equal partner, a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to show it. This was her moment of reinvention, a moment where she finally saw herself as someone capable of achieving great things. As she stepped into this new chapter of her life, Gordon couldn't help but admire her. Sally wasn't just his business partner, she was someone who had proven to herself and to the world that no setback was too great to overcome. Together, they were building something stronger than just a business, they were building their new lives. While Gordon and Sally were thriving in their new venture, Laura's life was falling apart. The life she had built on secrets, lies, and betrayal was unraveling in ways she never expected. She had left Gordon for Tony, believing that the affair would provide her with the happiness she had been searching for, but the reality was far from what she had imagined. Tony, who had once promised her everything, was now a distant figure. His attention, once so overwhelming, had begun to fade. He had gotten what he wanted from her, and now he was preoccupied with his own ambitions. Laura found herself alone, financially strapped, and with no one to turn to. The lavish lifestyle she had envisioned, the one that was supposed to come with her affair, had quickly slipped through her fingers. Tony had no interest in supporting her, he had already moved on to bigger things. And now Laura was left with the harsh reality that she had betrayed the one person who had loved her unconditionally, Gordon. Desperation set in when Laura realized she had no options left. Her life was falling apart, and she knew that the only person who could save her now was the one she had hurt the most. One evening, she swallowed her pride and made the call to Gordon. Her voice, shaky with emotion, trembled as she spoke. Gordon, I need help. I don't know what to do. Tony won't help me. I've lost everything. Can you help me? Gordon, having moved on and finally finding his footing with the new business, was stunned by the call. His initial reaction was one of anger and disbelief. How could Laura have the nerve to reach out to him after everything that had happened? The bitterness of her betrayal still stung, and part of him wanted to hang up on her. But as he listened to the desperation in her voice, something shifted. He had spent so long wondering if he would ever find closure, and here it was. Laura, once the center of his world, was now pleading for his help. Gordon realized that he had to make a choice: hold on to the anger and resentment, or let go and move forward with his own life. With a steady, unflinching voice, Gordon replied, I won't help you, Laura. You made your choices. I've moved on, and I'm not looking back. You need to figure things out on your own. It was a moment of finality. Gordon had found peace in his new life, and he refused to let Laura's desperation drag him back into the past. He had suffered enough, and now he was living a life he could be proud of. Laura, on the other hand, was left to face the consequences of her choices, realizing too late that sometimes, when you burn bridges, you can never cross them again. With that, Gordon hung up the phone, and for the first time in a long while, he felt free. He had broken free from the chains of his past, and now he was ready to embrace the future. As Gordon and Sally's business continued to grow, they began to see the fruits of their labor. What had once been a small, uncertain venture, born from the wreckage of their personal lives, was now becoming something solid, something real. The road had been difficult, filled with setbacks and challenges, but they had persevered. Together, they had built a foundation based on trust, hard work, and a shared belief in the potential for success. The breakthrough with the Korean supplier had been the spark they needed, but it was the dedication and passion they poured into every aspect of their business that made the difference. They started with just a handful of pieces of farm equipment, but soon, the orders began pouring in. Customers were impressed by the quality of the products and the affordability, and word spread quickly. What started as a small operation had quickly grown into a respected player in the farm equipment market. For Gordon, it was a humbling experience. He had gone from being fired, betrayed, and devastated by the collapse of his marriage, to building a thriving business. He looked at the employees they had hired, the inventory stacked high, and the partnerships they had forged, and he knew this was his moment. He had not only rebuilt his career, but had also regained his sense of dignity. He had proven that despite the deepest betrayal, there was always a way forward if you were willing to fight for it. Sally, too, found herself flourishing in this new chapter. The transformation in her wasn't just about the physical adjustments to her prosthesis, it was about the confidence that came from owning a part of something meaningful. She was no longer just the assistant, she was a key player in the success of the company. Her leadership skills shone through as she handled negotiations, managed their expanding workforce, and kept the operations running smoothly. For the first time, Sally felt truly valued and appreciated for her contributions. She had gone from feeling overlooked and underestimated to becoming an essential part of something extraordinary. As the business continued to grow, Gordon and Sally's partnership strengthened. They had built this company together, from the ground up, and they knew they had something special. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And while the road ahead would surely have its challenges, they were no longer afraid of what the future might hold. They had each other, a thriving business, and the knowledge that together they could overcome anything. In the end, it wasn't just the success of their business that mattered, it was the personal growth they had both experienced along the way. Gordon had learned that no matter how deep the betrayal, there was always a path to healing. His journey had been one of painful lessons, but it had led him to a place where he was stronger, wiser, and more at peace with himself than ever before. He had been broken, but now he was whole again. Sally's journey was one of empowerment. From the quiet secretary who had hidden behind self-doubt and physical discomfort to the confident businesswoman leading a successful company, her transformation was nothing short of inspiring. She had learned to trust herself, to take risks, and to recognize her own worth. Together with Gordon, she had rebuilt not just a business, but a life one full of potential and possibility. For both of them, the future was bright. The farm equipment company was growing, their personal lives were flourishing, and they had built a strong network of people who respected and admired them. Gordon and Sally were no longer defined by their past mistakes or failures, they were defined by the resilience they had shown in the face of adversity and the strength they had found in each other. Looking ahead, they knew the road would continue to be filled with challenges. Business would never be without its hurdles, and life would throw its curveballs. But for the first time in years, they felt equipped to face whatever came their way. They had each other, they had built something real, and most importantly, they had the confidence to know that no matter what happened, they could handle it. As they moved forward, there was one thing Gordon and Sally knew for sure: they had come a long way from the shattered lives they once knew. And now, with everything they had built and everything they had learned, the future was theirs to shape. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps me continue bringing you more incredible stories. Stay tuned for more, and remember, your best days are ahead of you.